Hey everybody, so we're back with part 2 of the look at the 70s Doctor Strange. So this one we're going to be focusing on issues 6 through 9, which turn out to be the second story arc with the return of the Dread Dormammu. So just as I go through these series, what I've done is for example, in number 6 here, there's talk, there's reference to other series and other issues throughout this book. So what I did was, as I was buying these, I would go through the issues themselves and see if there was any reference to something that I thought might be like a major story arc. So for example, hopefully you can see that there. This panel here is Loki and Dormammu, and it makes reference to something that happened in the Avengers number 118. So when I've been able to, I've found the issue and read it before the actual Doctor Strange issue, just to give myself a little bit of background. I don't know, I thought it would be kind of an interesting way to read the series, first of all, and also since I'm not, as I've said a million times before, since the Marvel Comics is stuff that I haven't really followed my whole life, also give me a little bit of a backstory. So, so we'll start with this one. So the Avengers. So in Doctor Strange number 6, this happens, they refer to this before, which is the end of a, just let me check my notes here. This issue wrapped up what was an 11-part story arc with Dormammu and Loki. They finally, I guess in their kind of chance to dominate the world, in this issue people have started turning into monsters. And it's the Avengers with the Defenders, as you can see by that first page there. So people have been started to turn into monsters. They're wondering how they can do that, how they can protect the Earth and also destroy Loki and Dormammu. They want to protect the people, not hurting them, to kind of just stunning them, because Doctor Strange is saying once they kind of defeat them, everybody should return back to being humans, so they don't want to really hurt any of the monsters. And it kind of goes through to what becomes the final fight. S.H.I.E.L.D. comes in, and they kind of take over, battling these monsters, while the rest of them follow the psychedelic pathway to where Dormammu and Loki are talking to each other. And what eventually happens is Loki turns on Dormammu. The Watcher comes into the picture just to kind of look over everything, the proceedings, and the battle ensues. And that's all that I'll really show you that one. Suffice it to say that they do get destroyed. I think Scarlet Witch is the one who finally destroys destroys Dormammu, sucks him up into this energy thing that they have, this flashlight looking thing, and zap his being into Loki, which drives Loki insane. Dormammu ceases to exist, which brings us into this one. So after our last story arc, it's Doctor Strange and Clea just walking through town and just kind of discussing what's happened lately, and she's going to be given a chance to heal a rabbit to kind of see how her powers are coming along. This one introduces Gene Colan as an artist and Klaus Janson as inker. Steve Englehart is still the author. Tom Warchowski still does the lettering, as they call it, calligraphy. Petra Goldberg comes in for coloring, and Len Wein is still the editor. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a strong start to another story arc. I wasn't completely, I don't know, it just seems to have lost something. Something that's interesting about these older comics is the kind of muddied look. I mean, it can work sometimes very, very well. As you'll see later on, I'll talk about it a little later on, some of it becomes so dense, the pages, and the colors kind of wash together, that it didn't really do much for me, especially in the last video when we were talking about comparing it to Ditko's art. Obviously, it's a different era, it's different artists, etc., etc. It just seems a lot more dense. There's not a lot of room left to breathe, and I don't know if it's working for me so much in this one. It's not horrible by any means, because there's still kind of definitive borders in this issue for sure. You'll see later on, this one unfortunately had the stamp cut out of it. I didn't realize till I read it, so I'm going to try to find another complete copy of that. There's still more definitive borders and definitive panels. Later on they kind of all wash together, which also does work sometimes. I think this one, because I was so kind of taken by the first story arc, it was a lot to live up to in my mind, so it just didn't appeal to me as much. Umar, the Unrelenting, is the sister of Dread Dormammu. They come into a clash with her. We think that she's been defeated, so Doctor Strange knows that she'll be back, so he's going to go to what is Clea's realm to kind of face who he thinks is Dormammu, because he fears that after their last encounter, which is when it referred to this one, it introduces the idea that Dormammu is like an idea as opposed to maybe an actual entity, that if there's people in the world that believe in him, he will exist. So he's kind of like this world's devil, obviously. So Clea takes it upon herself to... She gets contacted by Mother Nature, who is being trapped by Dormammu, and she takes it upon herself to go and battle Dormammu on her own to free Mother Nature, which we kind of leave off on this issue, where she comes face to face with Dormammu. And that brings us to issue number 7. Still Gene Colan art in this one, still Steve Englehart, the author. John Romita does the inks in this, and still Orchowski doing the lettering. A new colorist again, Phil Rachelson. It seems like the colorist really changes a lot. The inkers for this one do as well, but the colorist is kind of one that issue to issue it really does change. And I think this is now, I think we're on to the non-Brunner covers. I believe it doesn't have his name kind of like it does there, so I'm assuming, I don't know who this is now, but it's a different artist for the cover. So, just kind of continues the story. We'll quickly flip through this as well. Face to face with Dormammu. She realizes it kind of gives another little backstory, what happened in Avengers 118 again, just in case you had missed it. And then she hears a bit more about Dormammu's sister, and kind of comes to pass that she really doesn't have enough power to defeat him on her own, so she flees. Mother Nature gives her a chance to flee with what little power she has left, because Dormammu is kind of absorbing all of her power. And then we are introduced to Orini, the Protector, I think, and it's Umar's kind of bodyguard, so to speak. He kind of is the one that protects both Dormammu and Umar. And I'm not sure if it's in this one, but then we find out a little bit more about him. Maybe it's in the next issue. And more of the same, just kind of slowly going through the story. And again, I guess it's this arc. Yeah, I don't know. It just didn't really appeal to me as much. It seems to be a little bit all over the place. There's a lot of different characters that they're maybe reintroducing for some readers, but for me, it's introducing them. So it was a lot for me to absorb. And it just didn't seem as interesting a story as the last one. And I think maybe that's the biggest part, that the last time it really did focus on Doctor Strange and his journey. And sure, there were a lot of other characters, but the main point of it was focusing on Doctor Strange. Whereas this one, they're trying to focus a little bit more on Clea and her background and their relationship, but also trying to focus on Doctor Strange and really making things difficult for him. That it's a lot packed in, because then they're also talking about Dormammu's sister Umar and her kind of minion, I guess, who is responsible for getting a group of people back together to kind of worship Dormammu to bring him back to life. So it's just a lot of different stories jam-packed into one. So there we have the end of that issue. Yeah, and we do find out this issue. He is Clea's father, and is not impressed with her because she left their realm and went off with Doctor Strange. So, and that's where we leave this one. Then we go to issue number 8, June 1975. Englehart author again. Gene Colan pencils. Tom Palmer this time does inks and the colors. And John Costanza does the lettering. And Len Wein again. This is Rites of Passage. So this is one where there was a tie-in. Giant Size Avengers number 4. At the end of this one, it says at the end, check into Giant Size Avengers 4, where Dormammu and Umar kind of wreak havoc on the world. So I didn't have that issue, unfortunately. It's one that's still on my list to find. So I just dove right into this one. And you get the sense that they pretty much spell it out that he was defeated. He tried to get revenge on Scarlet Witch, who was responsible for his defeat in the Avengers 118. Doesn't come to pass. See, everything in this one seems a bit cleaner, even the... And that's something that I don't know, maybe if it's the aging of the books too, but even just looking at that page, the colors seem to work. They don't seem to wash as much together. Everything seems a bit cleaner. And who was it this time? Tom Palmer on inks and colors. Still the kind of defined borders and everything, which I really like. Seems to work very well. Allows it to some kind of separation. So we go back to the junkie, and Clea is going to kind of get her revenge. She's a heroin addict, so she stabs him with a syringe and poisons him to kill him. Because they have no need for him anymore. Basically, they have no use for him. And they kind of investigate this world a little more. Clea really thinks a lot about her past. She goes back to her old house. Because what's going to happen is they're going to meditate, and they're going to try to gain more of Doctor Strange's powers, so they can attack these nameless ones, the mindless ones rather, sorry. And it sort of ends up backfiring a little bit, where Clea doesn't get killed, but she gets kind of defeated for a moment's time. And just more battle, and really nothing really happens in this one either. It's just kind of yet another part to what's eventually going to be the final issue, the final battle with Dormammu, which takes place in issue number 9. Let me flip my pages on my notes here. Again, Englehart story, Colin pencil, Chiaramonte does the inking, F. Chiaramonte, and Karen Mantlo is in for the lettering, and Janice Cohen is in for the coloring. And this one is where it has some interesting panels and interesting use of not the borders and things. So we'll have a look at that. So this basically kind of ties up the whole story. Dormammu's now on Earth and just terrorizing people. Mother Nature is still trapped, but Doctor Strange now has his powers back, and he's not as, he's not on the verge of defeat, so now he's kind of gaining his strength to finally attack. And what we do find out is that Umar has been plotting against Dormammu the whole time, so now that he's kind of come to pass in the real world and has this now full power, she takes all the power from him, shrinking him. She becomes gigantic and is now the one who is going to destroy the Earth. And we also find out in this one her link with Orini. They had a little flashback there where they were intimate with each other, and turns out she is the mother of Clea, whose secret he's kept the whole time and Clea doesn't know, and she basically used him to kind of get in touch with her last bits of humanity, and found out how disgusting it was, as she says right there. gods, I had to know, had to lose the humanity within me, but it's disgusting. So she's disgusted with the human side of her, and then she ends up treating him kind of like garbage the rest of their existence. And then the final battle commences. Again, they talk a lot about the link between Clea and Doctor Strange and how strong their bond is. And together they eventually defeat, together with Mother Nature, I should say. And actually, in an interesting kind of panels down here, they start bringing in the reader, so to speak. They kind of bring in, Mother Nature brings in all of nature to combat against the idea of Dormammu, and the idea, because Dormammu actually comes back and destroys Clea. He becomes the kind of main focus again. Mother Nature kind of asks us, so to speak, to help them in their power. So not only is she calling on nature, she's calling on breaking that third wall there, or whatever, the fourth wall rather, and bringing the comic book viewer into the issue as well. And it's kind of left off as this issue on a table. They do defeat him, obviously, and next issue will be Eternity. There was one passage in here that I thought worked really well. One page where there wasn't defined borders that I just wanted to show you and talk a bit about how it can work. This one here, it was this flashback page actually. Almost like the kind of traditional 12 panel page, but it's 10 instead, but still the kind of 3 across, 2, 3, 2, the layout of it, but just the transition through his beard to this and the kind of wavier lines and everything. I just found that worked for me. I thought it was a really neat use, especially then you jump back to kind of the crisp panels that are almost overlaying each other, almost photographically. Yeah, I mean, while I wasn't blown away by the story, I still am enjoying it enough. I still enjoyed it enough. The art is still pretty decent. I just hope this next story arc with Eternity will be quite a bit better. And I hope they sort out their inkers and letterers and colorists and stuff. It would be nice to have a nice run of people of the same creative talent. My battery's just about to die here, it looks like. So that's it. That is part 2 of the look at Doctor Strange. I hope you're enjoying it. Leave me comments if there's anything you'd like me to focus on a little more, or if you have any just comments on the style. I'm finding it really interesting to do reviews like this. It's making me look at the comics quite a bit differently. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun. And one thing I wanted to touch on that was in a note from before, part of the appeal of this kind of thing to me is it almost seems to bridge the gap between a lot of more alternative titles and underground stuff that I enjoyed reading, and kind of more mainstream stuff, but still really has that Marvel kind of feel to it. But the whole mystical element I find really interesting, because it's still not quite like a superhero book. I can't imagine that I'm surprised that something like Doctor Strange went over as well as it did, because it doesn't necessarily, it has a lot of internal kind of struggle, and it has a lot of psychic battles and use of magic, as opposed to, you know, a big team where they just go around beating the hell out of the bad guys like they do in something like Avengers or Defenders. But I guess maybe that helped as well, because he was also in the Defenders title, so this was the more metaphysical battles than the physical ones. So anyway, that's all I'll say about it. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks very much for watching.